Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, a Pittsburgh Steelers podcast made by fans like you, for fans like you. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. I'm your host, Joe Kuzma, and today I have a special guest co-host with me. Is Mr. Steel Dad himself, Marc Uhlmann. Do you go by Mr. Steel Dad by any chance? Is Mr. Formal way of mentioning that, Marc?
I guess that would be my dad, but he's no longer with us, so I guess I'm Mr. Steel Dad. But I just prefer Steel Dad. That's perfect.
Yeah, you know, that's kind of funny. We're always talking about all the different nicknames back and forth, myself and you. And you know what? I'm just gonna go with it. I was gonna say, you know, we were talking about nicknames. I think last time I had a few guests on, I did the round table with Neil Coolong and Jeff Hartman, and
Right.
I'm gonna upset them because I honestly think the last time me and you got together, Marc,
Okay.
that we had the best podcast to date on the Steel City Underground podcast.
That is some serious pressure, Joe. Serious pressure.
So we're gonna try and live up to this. I guess we're gonna cherry pick whatever stories we can pull out of this week one. Like, I guess we want to call it a blowout. It was the biggest blowout. Well, I don't know. Both Monday night games were actually blowouts, but the other one wasn't a football game, was it? I mean, it was the 49ers and the Rams, and they just yeah, I know. It was bad. I mean, it's bad enough sometimes you stay up late at night and you're up at least on the East Coast here for those of you listening that are on the Eastern time zone, and you're up to maybe midnight with some of these Thursday night games and Monday night games, and you're on such a high that you're not going to sleep and you want to watch this other football game, and it was nearly unwatchable. And it was particularly bad for me. As Eric Herman knows, me and Eric are constantly on the whole DraftKings, the daily fantasy thing, and I had 3 Rams in that game playing, and it was like pulling teeth trying. Todd Gurley didn't do anything, Tavon Austin, and then I had the Rams defense. Who would have known? The 49ers 28-0 there, but the Steelers 38-16 with the Redskins. But before we get to that, no one guessed your contest. You had a contest over at. For those of you who don't know, Marc is the co-founder of Steel City Blitz, and they run this contest now every week. Yep. I assume, correct?
Yep.
And it's called Nail the Number. You know what? You're probably better to explain it. Go right ahead.
Well, Nail the Number was brought to me by a good friend of our website named Craig Scott, and he's shameless plug. He's at Craig Scott 31, and you'll want to know that anyway because he's the guy you want to tweet at to get involved using hashtag Nail the Number. And what it is, Joe, is every week Craig puts up $1,000. It's his own money. I don't have a dime to put up. I just like I told you off Mike, I'm just a facilitator. So what it is this week, nobody got it last week. There's 2 things that you have to nail in order to win. So last week, for example, you had to get the exact final score correct, and plus the number of touchdown passes by Ben Roethlisberger, and no one got it. And I think the last Craig had told me we had over 150 entries. So, you know, a lot of people, but again, 38-16, I certainly would have never dreamed of that final score. But the 3 touchdown passes, I'm sure many people had. So this week, you know, Craig contacts me in the morning and says, okay, this is what we're going to do. And so I write up the article. And so this week's Nail the Number will be, you have to nail the total points for the Steelers, just the Steelers this week against the Bengals, and also the number of receptions by Antonio Brown this week. So, Craig will also add an extra $100. He calls it his escalator. So nobody won last week. So we'll go up to $1,100. And because it's a rival, he said Bengals and Ravens, he said he would even do his best to throw in some playoff tickets should the Steelers get there. So this guy is just generous 101. He's a great guy. and he just does this for the fun of it, to be quite honest.
That is awesome. And you know what? I actually forgot to enter last week, but I wouldn't have been good anyway, because even in the daily fantasy world, and Eric knows this too, because we were comparing the rosters and we're going back and forth, and I successfully talked him out of playing Darius Hayward-Bay. So that was a good thing with Monday night's game.
Yeah.
However, I played Kirk Cousins, and I'm pretty sure that Eric did too, because we thought he was at least good for maybe 2 touchdowns, maybe passing, maybe 1 to Jordan Reed, and also he's mobile. He's usually on his feet and running around, and the Steelers contained him very good, and they're playing mostly a prevent defense there. So I'm kicking myself for not playing Ben Roethlisberger. Of course, 27 to 37, 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, and then the 1 pick, but he was good for 112.4 quarterback rating. And of course, kicking myself because, Kirk Cousins, even though he throws for 329, no touchdowns, 2 picks, 72.7. Steelers did very good with him. Kirk Cousins was on a roll. He had all those. I went over this in the preview episode of the Steel City Underground podcast. He had all these consecutive games. He only threw I think 3 or 4 picks in the last 9 games that he played. And yeah, he's already matching those totals pretty much. So talking about the stars of the game, I mean, Ben really shined. If you happen to listen to the Ben Roethlisberger show that's on Tuesdays, he said that the one he picked up off the grass was a design play, and he was joking about that, of course. But man, these guys make it look like the Sandlot, or watching the video game, or just something. It almost doesn't look real as we're witnessing this as Steelers fans. So of course, in that, the stars of the game too, D'Angelo Williams.
Yep.
He's now leading the league in rushing, 143 yards and 2 touchdowns. I thought that these guys really shined on Monday.
I mean, can you imagine that the Steelers could be in a position where Le'Veon Bell could come back and he'd be replacing the league's leading rusher after 3 weeks?
A 33-year-old league leading rusher. He's the oldest running back, I think, that started this week. He is.
And obviously we still have 2 more weeks to go, but I mean, and that's the thing with what happened on Monday night is, they started kind of sluggishly, and the one big play that I don't know that gets talked about enough was Pouncey wrestling the football away from, I don't know what Redskin had it on the bottom of that pile, but it was 6-0, and they would have had the ball going in, and basically in the red zone. So that was huge. But man, I'm telling you what, D'Angelo is so low to the ground, and he has such powerful legs, and he's so fun to watch, because you think he's stopped and he just bounces off as if it's a bumper cars, and the next thing you know, he's picked up 4, 5, 6 yards, and it's hard to fault the line. I mean, to say that the line didn't do well, but yeah, some of those runs were kind of self-made at times, but boy, they ran the heck out of the counter. I guarantee you Cincinnati is looking at how to stop that this week. And certainly Ben, I mean, the thing with Ben is he's not your traditional quarterback. I mean, the guy, I think if you wanted to start a Sandlot football team right now with anybody in the NFL, there's your guy. Just for numerous reasons. I mean, he gets the ball snapped to him on the ground and just stands up and throws a strike down the field to Sammie Coates. So, obviously those two, and of course, AB had a huge game as well.
Oh yeah. Is there anything else that Antonio Brown can or can't do? I mean, the guy, aside from the twerking, which I guess he called it Doo-Doo Brown. So, yeah, I know. Doo-Doo Brown. I mean, you know what? I wanted to bring this up real quick, too. And I am stealing this from Eric. I guess Eric's fiance actually has not a Steelers blog, but just a general blog. And I guess she went off in general about the double standard of, are we really thinking Antonio Brown's dance was really that provocative that it deserves not only a penalty flag in that game, but a fine of $12,000 as well? Her position was, just take a look at the NFL's media site. 2/3 of it is pictures of barely clothed cheerleaders from 26 of the 32 member teams. Mm-hmm. And I guess she does make a point there, because whenever they have a break in the action, and whether it's a return or headed to commercial break, you get to see, I mean, now being men, of course, I don't think we necessarily mind seeing the cheerleaders all that much, and that isn't necessarily her position, too. I guess her double standard is if Antonio Brown wants to shake his rear end a little bit or thrust the air or whatever, is it really that provocative that they had to fine 12 G's, man? I mean, come on.
Here's my take on it, and I agree with her take as well. And to take it a step farther, the NFL website, I think, was actually showing his dance after or during the game and after the game. So I mean, come on, seriously, you're going to flag him, fine him, and still use the video to make money off of it. So there's that aspect of it. And, the other thing, too, is he did everything correctly. He didn't involve the ball as the prop. He didn't have other people join in. I mean, he did everything as he was technically supposed to do. And I made the joke to some of our guys. I said, my son watches these TV cartoon shows sometimes, and I'm watching Teen Titans yesterday, which is an animated show. And I'm seeing these videos of the characters twerking on there, and yet here's Antonio Brown getting a flag and a fine for it. I mean, I just look. I'm a big proponent of respecting the game and doing things the right way, but I also believe you got to let these guys have some fun too. It's part of what draws the fans in, and I didn't see anything wrong with it.
Yeah, it's the no fun league, as they say, or the National Fixed League is what I told my buddy, my Broncos fan buddy, that it actually, after they won, said National Fixed League. They wanted the Broncos to win, and there was more than one example of that. Several of these games were really close. This wasn't one of them.
No.
But Josh Norman was still crying. I think even this morning, there's still articles and noise coming out of the nation's capital of him saying, well, if I told Coach that I wanted to cover Antonio Brown, he would let me or something like that. And it's like, well, why didn't you?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's all talk. I mean, that guy, he may be a disappearing act and a one-hit wonder. That's my personal opinion. But you know what? I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know how his season's going to turn out. I just know that the Redskins have a very, 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 very poor history of paying a lot of money for free agents that do not pan out for them.
And, well, amen to that.
Yeah. So, and then you have the poor guy on the other side, Breland, who, because Josh Norman couldn't man up and tell his coach that he wanted to cover AB all game before the game. He says it after the game. So this poor guy is now on posters everywhere, wallpapers on phones and everything else. I mean, he got torched. He's burnt to a crisp, singed. There's nothing else there. If you sneeze, he is just going to disappear into space. The guy. I feel bad for him because we've seen Antonio do this to even the best in the league.
Yeah.
So, but I can't say you mentioned Sammie Coates. He was paying attention. He did have the ball that ricocheted off of him. But overall, I was very impressed with, I guess we want to call it the replacements or the new guys. You have Jesse James is both. We're going to touch on this even more, but at least let's stay on the positive side of the new guys here. Ben was really high on Jesse James, Eli Rogers, and Sammie Coates, and those guys filled in admirably. It's very scary to think what happens when you do get a Marcus Wheaton back, if Ladarius Green ever ends up playing. But the new guys, Mark, I've never been so excited about somebody like Eli Rogers since Antonio Brown, I think.
Well, I've been excited about him too, and I don't find him the type of guy that is going to catch the ball and take it 70 yards. I think he's a stick mover, which I think is perfect for this offense, especially when you do have Le'Veon Bell back and you obviously have Antonio Brown and with Wheaton scheduled to be back this week. He runs very crisp routes. He's very elusive, kind of quick. When he catches the ball, but he doesn't seem to me to have like top end speed, and you don't need that. You just need a guy to be able to get the 5, 6, 7 yard receptions. And I'll say this too. I think for a guy as young as he is, he seems to have a pretty good rapport already with Roethlisberger. I mean, certainly you saw a little bit of the interaction that they had after the interception, where it looked to me like Ben expected him to kind of slide back towards the sideline based on his throw, and Eli kind of sat down rather than slide over. And, that's something that they'll work out and they'll be better for it in the end. But other than that, they had a couple of real quick throws that were right on the money and good catch and runs with it. But yeah, I like Rogers a lot. I think Coates got off to a little bit of a slow start, and then he had a great catch down the sideline, of course. Also had a huge block on one of the D'Angelo Williams TD runs. So, man, those guys just did fantastic. And now you come in with Wheaton, and it's just one more bullet to put into the chamber.
Yeah, we mentioned Bell earlier, too. I even forget that Bell will be back. It's 2 more games. He gets to sit in the corner, and then he's going to be back. And I had to pull up the drive chart here after the 2-minute warning in the first half. 2nd and 5, Washington 38. Ben Roethlisberger misses D'Angelo Williams on a short pass. I think that was the one under pressure, and just kind of that wasn't a good one. 3rd and 5, they try and convert with D'Angelo Williams running the ball once again. Only get 4 yards. You have the 4th and 1, and Ben goes to Eli Rogers. Guess who again? Brayland, and that was for 19 yards. The Steelers call a timeout and then go right back to Eli Rogers once again for 6 yards. And then Eli Rogers gets that. This is where he gets the ping pong ball touchdown for the first of his career to finish off that drive. And Eli Rogers, I tell you, it's only one game, but I was already joking that if anyone still, like my one cousin still has a Mike Wallace jersey, I said, did you remove the nameplate from it yet? And maybe you could get a Rogers one or at least leave it blank. That's what they do in Cleveland, Mark. Are you aware of that? They do that with every player. I don't think anyone buys jerseys for Cleveland Browns anymore. And since we dovetailed into this already, RG3.
I can't say I blame them, to be honest.
RG3 already done up there. I mean, the guys get beat by Carson Wentz, the guy they could have drafted, or maybe potentially one of the 2 guys they could have drafted, because we weren't sure if it was going to be Goff or Wentz going first. But just hypothetically speaking, they get beat by the guy they could have drafted, and the guy that they did bring in to maybe be yet another savior at the quarterback position could be done for the year. They're talking about him coming back. Who knows? But it's just Eli Rogers, anyway, targeted 7 times, caught 6 of those balls, 59 yards, and then, of course, the goofy touchdown that came out of that. But our other guy, one of the other new guys there, Jesse James, I guess the question that we need to propose is, and I plan on, this is still in the hopper for something to do on SteelCityUnderground.com and write an article, and I've been busy and lazy. I wanted to ask the question, have the Steelers done enough at the tight end position? Let's say Green does not play at all this season. I don't know. Jesse James, they looked good, the running game. They just started jamming it down the Redskins throughout the closeout this game, but the pass protection and early on, we just said the 3rd and 5 where they didn't get enough yards. I don't know. How do you feel about this situation, Mark? It looks pretty obvious if James is out there, they're going to throw the ball, because Xavier Grimble has had butterfingers and David Johnson has always been David Johnson.
Yeah, James he's a fine receiver. I think he is the type of guy, he's going to get open. He's going to get the ball thrown to him. He's going to catch it, and then I think that's it. He's not exactly shifty. I wouldn't call him powerful when he runs. He's just going to get the catch, and that's it. Now, of course, he's wide open. He'll gain some yards, but in terms of traffic, things like that, he's going to catch the ball and he's going to be tackled. His blocking, inline blocking is scary. It worries me a great deal. There were a couple of instances where guys got around him very, very easily. He's not too bad on the move when they put him in as that move tight end where he goes back, line of scrimmage, back behind the offensive line or down the line, so to speak. And he's okay there. And yeah, go back to D'Angelo Williams, all the yards he had rushing, and you're thinking, hey, this line was fantastic. They had good blocking on the edges. Well, I think they did a lot of things to make sure that James wasn't necessarily part of some of those big runs. So he's got a ways to go. Can he get there? Absolutely. He can. He's a strong guy. He's got all kinds of these, clean and jerk records and stuff at Penn State, I guess. So it's not like he's not strong. It's just about technique. It's about the efficiency of being able to block well in line at that tight end position, and I think he can get there. As far as where are we going if Green never sees the field? It does concern me a little bit. But the one thing I always keep telling myself is, I don't know that we need a tight end if we've got Bell and Brown and Coates keeps developing and Rogers and Wheaton. I don't almost think it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and you know what? You've nailed it pretty much with Jesse James. I think the most surprising thing that most folks listening are not aware of. So when you take into account the playing time, the Steelers had 68 offensive plays or snaps or reps or whatever you want to call it. Now, the offensive line, obviously, all 5 men played 100% of the game, including Ben Roethlisberger. But the 7th person that played all 68 snaps, Jesse James. And I find that to be pretty telling that David Johnson was only in there for 17 snaps. He outsnapped Xavier Grimble by 1 extra. That's only about a quarter of the plays in the game. Mm-hmm. So the Steelers are running the 3 wide receiver sets with the single tight end and a single back. So, and this could change too. We're hoping to get Rosie Nix back for the Bengals game on Sunday. I think he'll make a bigger impact back there as well. He's one heck of a blocker. Of course, he's been troubled with some injuries throughout training camp and the preseason here. So I just found that very amazing that Jesse James, he never came off the field. And he was playing special teams too. So you know what? I don't have the special teams numbers, but I could probably find them. If I'm given a second here. I don't know. I would love to see what happens if Green comes back too, but like you said, man, we have Williams, you have Bell. I don't know where do you start.
I mean, yeah, if you bring in Green, and obviously it assumes he's healthy and ready to go, I mean, you go to that 12 personnel right now, and now you've got 2 good pass catching tight ends, but even further than that, you've also got a tight end that can stretch the field deep and really open it up underneath, for James, but even bigger for Antonio Brown on some of those crossing routes that he's so good on. But, Green is he is what he is. He's for another time to discuss because we don't know what's going to happen with him. And, I think they like Jesse James. I think Ben has shown that he's got some confidence in him. He was targeted twice down in the red zone, and it didn't work out. But we saw him go to him in the preseason for a touchdown, and that's what it's about. I can sit here and I can say Jesse's this, Jesse's that. But if the Steelers are comfortable with him and Ben Roethlisberger is happy with him, then that's all that matters.
Yeah, and I found Jesse James' numbers, 11 special teams snaps, so he was out there for 44% and it depends on what coverage and that you're playing too. Right. Really, he was only outsnapped on special teams by a few players, and that's a lot of our backup guys. Shamarko Thomas had 15, LJ Fort 16, Vince Williams 15, Anthony Chiquillo 18, and these are all names I'm about to bring up here too, because there was a huge push during as much as a month ago when we were still waiting for these exhibition games. We're still in training camp, and there's a ton of quotes. I just had an article go out with some quotes from Keith Butler, Joey Porter. They were talking about how they just wanted to play Jarvis Jones and Bud Dupree and no more rotation. And the rotation itself isn't something we're used to seeing. Last year was pretty much the only time, almost like hockey lines, like the HBK line. You had Harrison and Dupree come in and spell Jarvis Jones and Arthur Moats. And that worked out okay in my opinion, and you had 14 different Steelers that had at least 1 sack last year. I think it was 14.
I think that's right.
And it worked out for them. But they said, no, I think they really wanted to see what they had with Dupree, and of course that gets scrapped because Dupree goes to the injured reserve list. James Harrison had the most snaps last season. He had 611, I think is the number that I had. So we saw for sure that we're going to have a rotation going forward because Dupree's health, we don't know if he's going to play this season. of course, the linebackers, the outside linebackers, no one sacked Kirk Cousins in this game, but I wasn't really too concerned about that. Are you?
No, I mean, I'm always concerned when we don't get pressure. But then when I go back and I think about the game and I look at what we did, it was pretty clear that their idea was to keep the lid on Deshaun Jackson. In other words, drop more guys into that zone. Don't let him catch and run, and certainly don't let him get deep. And I think I haven't gone through all of it yet. I'm through most of the first half. I can only really remember one time where we brought more than 4 guys, and that was down towards the red zone where Washington Cousins threw the pass to Reed, which Ryan Shazier deflected in the end zone. We brought a corner from the outside on that play, and I think that was it. Everything else was 4 and 3-man rushes, and I found it almost kind of fascinating, some of the personnel choices that they had going on. You're talking about the rotation. You know, when Harrison came in, he came in with Chiquillo, and there were even a couple times when Chiquillo actually took a 3-point stance out on the edge, kind of that elephant type thing that I think the Steelers have been looking for. So, you know, I'm always disappointed when they don't get sacks. I mean, this is the Steelers we're talking about, but it was pretty obvious to me they were going to give up yards as long as they weren't giving up points, and I think in first downs, and I think they accomplished that.
You know, it wasn't pretty when it started, and I was talking about, of course, Braylon, of course, was the guy I said got posterized later in this game by AB. He's the one who had the pick, by the way, on Big Ben. Yeah, and that was going for them, and AB nearly fumbles the ball, and then Ben has the bad snap where he just picks it up and heaves it somehow, and it's just and the ping pong ball is somehow Eli Rogers. I mean, when things go your way, they go your way. Yes. When that ball gets hit off of Sammie Coates and it's picked, let's say, or both of those multiple fumbles, the one from Ben, the other one that hits the dirt, the one with AB, all that stuff goes against you, and all of a sudden it's fire Mike Tomlin, fire Todd Haley. Say the 4th down pass, Eli Rogers doesn't catch it, or AB doesn't catch it there. Why are you going for this? Right. So we're all geeked up and excited and happy, but on the other hand, Lady Luck is definitely on our side. Jordan Reed starts out with catches for 12, 14, and 13 yards. But then the next 6 attempts, 3 of them, one of those, the Shazier play you had just mentioned, would be incomplete. And his gains were 4, 5, and 5. They really put a lid on him. And then, of course, the Shazier interception was also intended for Jordan Reed there. And Shazier just steps up and almost looks like Troy Polamalu reincarnated there on that play. Just absolutely just ridiculous is the best that I could say.
And nearly scored on it. I mean, sans the penalty, but yeah, he got all the way down there.
I do believe that penalty with Mike Mitchell was actually the ball that Shazier picks off right in front of Jordan Reed, making this leaping acrobatic catch. Mitchell was going there to hit Reed as the ball would have arrived. He timed it up, lined it up, and I think that's who the penalty. At least that's what I saw with the camera view that I had. Like you, I hadn't had a chance to hit every single camera angle that's available for this game, and of course, well, you know, family. Being a Steel dad yourself gets in the way. So, but yeah, you mentioned Chiquillo, and I got it here. I got some stat numbers. Of course, he was they only went with 4 outside linebackers. Jarvis Jones plays nearly the whole game at that position. I didn't have the breakdown because of the personnel grouping and playing a lot of nickel and dime. But Jones was out there for 42 of, I think it was 58 plays that the Redskins had run. Somewhere I saw 55. I think that's in total with penalties and whatnot too. 72%. Jarvis is practically out there the whole time. Moats with 33, and then it didn't seem like James Harrison was really out there, and that's because he really was only out half the time with 26, 45% of the snaps. And Chiquillo, 15. He only played 22 all of last season, so he's out there a quarter of the time too. So it will be interesting. I thought personally, and just an observation, they did get the pressure. that necessary. Cam Hayward is into it too, but man, Hayward is just a beast. He was getting there. Jarvis Jones was getting in there too. Jaquillo at some points, they were at least collapsing the pocket. But the guy who really rocked Kirk Cousins, and a lot of people made a big deal out of this, was LJ Fort got in there over Vince Williams, and then LJ Fort comes in and just rocks Kirk Cousins' world. Williams is the guy who got the 3-year contract. Ford is a guy that everyone thought was on the roster bubble. Is there any big deal to make of this?
I don't think so. I think what we're looking at here is much like we talked about with those outside linebackers. Personnel groupings. What does Keith Butler want to go with? When Fort started to get a little bit more time, if I remember correctly, I think we had kind of grown the lead a little bit, and he is a very good kind of between the tackles blitzer, and you saw it right away. I mean, I can't even remember the guy that was trying to block him, but he just plowed the guy into Cousins, and he just has that type of ability, but he can also cover as well. Whereas Vince Williams is one of the surest tacklers on the team, but he's not the best guy in coverage. So I think that's where they kind of draw the distinctions there, is they like Fort having to do a couple of different things, but then they like Williams doing a couple of different things. I guess this discussion might be better to have, let's say, a year from now, if in fact Lawrence Timmons is gone. I mean, the season has started. There's not going to be any new contract thing for Timmons. So at that point, it's going to be real interesting to me to see just what they want to do there at that particular linebacker spot.
Yeah, and I think we talked about that on the last show about the contracts that needed to get done, and Vince Williams was kind of a surprise. Of course, David DeCastro is the one we said needed to get done. We weren't sure if they were going to shift around some money for Antonio Brown. They ended up doing that. But yes, Vince Williams, we suffered with that when Larry Foote went down, and it was Vince Williams' trial by fire his rookie year because Keon Lewis, I believe, was the guy who came in and just couldn't hack it at all. And Vince, like you said, hard hitter, sure tackler, maybe not the best pass coverage guy. So LJ Fort is actually, he steps in for Ryan Shazier, and maybe Williams is more of the prototype for Lawrence Timmons. Of course, it's only one game. We're all doing a lot of hypotheticals just like we did in the preseason. There's still a lot of football to be played, but I just thought that was kind of interesting, and I was impressed. Fort shot through there, reminded me of one of the Will Allen blitzes that we saw last season.
I would agree, and you mentioned Larry Foote. It was a little Larry Foote-esque as well. Foote always had that ability, especially in the A gaps, though. But to squeeze himself in there on the line scrimmage and get to the quarterback.
Yeah, it's a blast from the past, and now we got to look forward to the Cincinnati Bengals. I think I'm going to attribute Ed Bouchette to saying that he thinks that maybe the stadium scoreboard will be pouring blood instead of ketchup at Heinz Field on this Sunday. We know that Pete Morelli is going to be the referee for this game. Of course, he is famous for getting the suspension or demotion. He would have done one of the Steelers games last year. I think he got moved to like a San Francisco game because they only have so many referees. You're not just going to say you're fired. They only have so many people that cover these games. So instead, instead of getting a trip to Pittsburgh, he got a trip to San Francisco. Maybe better places to eat there. I don't know. Maybe he enjoyed that, but it just concerns me that this big game, you do have a veteran referee. Maybe he made an honest mistake. Everyone does. I'm willing to let that slide, but I'm always concerned that they're going to be able to keep a lid on this. Ben and the Steelers, they claim they're not going to be out for revenge for the injury, but I guarantee you that these offensive linemen, everybody, they're going to create. We're talking about a fort. They're going to create a wall around Ben, and if anyone sneezes on them, it's going to be a Donnybrook. It's going to pop off, and I don't know. Fists may fly. So I'm hoping, at least in this case, Antonio Brown being knocked out the last time he played against the Bengals. You see him with that famous smile with Josh Norman trying to get in his head on Monday night. I hope he has the same attitude and doesn't let any frustration or anything settle in, because it's going to be a mind game. The Bengals are going to come to play, and I'll have more of a preview with that in the coming days, coming forward. But Steel Dad, always good to have you on. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to join us here. Any parting words?
Hey, as always, thanks for having me on, Joe. And yeah, I think we're going to see a different Steelers defense this week. I don't think they'll sit back as much as they did last week. And, hopefully the Steelers do keep their heads. It's the type of thing Cincinnati's going to want to come in and rattle cages and stuff. And, we've seen now, we saw Aaron Donald get ejected Monday night. He got those 2 penalties, and that's the rule now. You get 2 of those and you're gone. And guys have to be careful. So, yeah, hopefully cooler heads will prevail, and hopefully the Steelers will prevail on Sunday in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and speaking of disciplined football, the Steelers were only penalized 4 times in that Redskins game. So as long as they continue playing the disciplined football and they win the turnover battle, they definitely won the time of possession. I think we could go 2-0 and get that early game lead on the Bengals, hopefully. But Mark, once again, thanks for joining me today.
My pleasure, Joe, as always, anytime.
And, of course, you can follow Steel Dad at Steel Dad on Twitter. So very original, but just like it said, Steel Dad, no underscores, no periods, no hyphens. Nope. He is the one and only, the original. And there you have it, folks. You could always follow me as well. We have the Steel City Underground handle. It's Steel Under. We're missing some vowels, as Alex Trebek would probably be looking for, but there's only so many letters that you could use for a Twitter handle. And my personal Twitter that's lagging behind in followers, Joe_Kuzma, because I either created an account earlier in a past life or somebody else was just stealing my name, but I have the underscore in there. Otherwise, ladies and gentlemen, we will catch you later. Be safe, be good, and I will catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.